We could do the intro in the after show.
That'd be great. That's what we should do. Do you guys have anything to talk about today?
Modern problems.
Modern problems?
I kind of like that.
What does that mean to you?
Well, you mentioned burnout.
I did. I feel like I overbook myself sometimes, but I don't know. I feel like we've talked about that. Did we talk about burnout before?
Probably in some capacity, but I mean, if it's on your mind,
Yeah,
it
it's
would
pertinent.
definitely be worth talking about.
I got something to add to that.
Okay. Well, then that's our topic.
Sweet.
Would you like to do the intro?
How about I intro the topic? I feel a little burnout at times lately. Like I get into a rhythm and then something breaks that rhythm and then it just feels like I'm doing too much. And I don't know. And I just, sometimes it eats at me and I get all these things that I want to do that I can't do, or I make up the excuse that I'm too busy to do certain things, and I don't know. This is my topic today, burnout. I'm feeling it. Nothing's gonna change. I love what I do. I just there's just too much going on.
Honestly, I get the same vibe from. I get the same vibe. I have the same problem from time to time. And recently, I think a lot of it has to do with the weather. I mean, the three of us now are all in cold climates, and right now it's 7 degrees outside, and I want to go outside and do things, but I think of every excuse to stay in the house. Like yesterday was Sunday, and I keep my laser in the house so that it doesn't freeze like my previous one. So I was in my jams all day until like 6 o'clock, and I finally went to the shop last night at 6 o'clock. I had things to do at the shop, but I made every excuse to just stay in the house because of the weather. And it kind of stifles your to-do list. It stifles your creativity, your to-do list, because whether you're conscious or unconscious, you constantly keep thinking of reasons not to do stuff that causes you to go outside when it's 2 degrees out. I mean, that's...
So you're saying that the burnout is caused by like stuff being like procrastinating because it's so cold? Is that what you mean?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, personally, yeah, that's definitely my feeling, because I keep looking at my to-do list and I'm like, oh, all this involves getting in my car and going and doing stuff, but it's so cold out.
You're right. Or everything becomes a mess because it's sloppy and wet outside, and you bring that in the house, and yeah, that's definitely part of it for sure.
And the shop is all in disarray because I'm like, I'm done with this. Let me get out of here. I'm freezing.
Yes.
Right now, my shop, if it's like 10 degrees outside, my shop is like 25 degrees. That's like the difference. I don't have proper heat in there. It does feel warmer because the wind is not in there because there's walls, but I might as well be working in the driveway. It's just impossible. I did go. So last night, after being in the house all day long experimenting with the laser, I went to the shop at about 6 o'clock and I worked till about 9 o'clock. And in those 3 hours, I was extremely productive. But I procrastinated all day long to get to the shop because I knew that I had to go in and crank the heaters up, and, gluing in the cold isn't fun. It doesn't seem to work. But I have a couple of projects I got a few projects I got to paint, and, I got to wait till the weather breaks. I had to tell my client, I'm like, sorry, this involves a lot of painting, and the painting is just not going to go well unless it's above freezing.
Yeah. You're right about that. There's no I can't do any spray lacquer in the wintertime because I can't do it in the shop and it's too cold to do it outside. You have to everything takes more time because you have to warm up the car, you have to warm up the shop, or drive slow because it's sloppy out.
Is that is the procrastination end of it, like, is that part of what you're dealing with right now, David? Or is that, I understand it's what Jimmy's dealing with, but is that part of the root of like what you were talking about?
I think it's a small portion of it. I think I don't know. You wake up and it's nice and sunny out and it's warm. You're a little bit more inspired to do things. So I don't think I realized that's part of it until Jimmy just said that. I think part of it has to do with I was in a really good rhythm and a couple things messed up that rhythm, and then it just feels like everything is out of whack and I can't get back into that rhythm.
Can you say what those things were? Like, maybe that'll help us.
I'm not complaining, and I love my family, but Grandma hurt herself. She broke her leg,
right.
and so we're all taking turns going to visit Grandma. So I was doing that every day, and I think part of what I do, I think what we do is like when you have your own business, you kind of work all the time. Maybe I don't work super hard for 8 hours, but I work at my own pace for 14 or 16 hours, right?
Yeah.
And so when I work at my own pace for that long and something breaks that up, it's like, oh, I have to shuffle things around, and oh, I have a phone call now that I have to do, and this is not going to be a fun phone call, or there's a trip. I don't want to take this trip now, and
yeah. It's like the work still has to get done, even if life gets in the way. You can't just like kick it down the road, like you still got to do it.
You guys want to hear something? The other night, we were here at the house, Taylor and I, we fed the dogs, and we turned around, we left. There was no more food in the room, so we left them alone because the dogs get competitive. And we turned around, and we both, from different parts of the house, heard Chippy yelp, and he yelped really loud. We came in, and he was paralyzed on the floor. Bear had like stomped on him or something. We don't know exactly what happened because we weren't here. But in an instant, like the whole entire day, had to make a left turn, and we put him in the car. We took him to the animal hospital, which is an hour drive away. I grabbed my computer, and we went to the animal hospital, and they brought him in for x-rays. He was okay. I mean, it was really scary for a minute there. We thought maybe he was going to have some permanent spine damage or something. He's totally fine, but they took him in, they x-rayed him. But I brought my computer with me and sat in the waiting room with my computer on my lap and my hard drive, and I was editing because I had to finish the one video I was working on. I had some obligations. So I had to drag my computer with me. And I said, this could take all night. God forbid he has a real problem. They're going to keep him in there. We're going to be there all night long with him. And so, sometimes, remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about deadlines, and I said, no matter what happens, sometimes I have to keep that deadline. And this was one of the videos I published recently. Was, like I said, I had an obligation because there was an advertisement in it, so I had to publish it. And you got to do what you got to do sometimes. But like I said, sometimes the day makes a complete left turn. You have all kinds of plans, and you just got to roll with it.
Yeah. So I'm curious on talking about it from burnout, that word in particular. To me, when I think of burnout, I think of I've been doing the same thing at the same pace for a really long time or to some length of time, and eventually I just run out of stamina. All right, is that kind of what happening, or is it like you're trying to make up a difference because you've got added stuff that you have to do now in your schedule, and you're trying to keep that pace with more work or with more obligation? You know what I mean? Like, if this new stuff hadn't come into the equation, do you think you would have burned out on that same schedule?
I don't think so. So maybe I'm not using the word burnout in the way that you are, but I just to me, burnout is just being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I don't know. Jimmy brought up the dog. That's another thing. We got a new puppy, and new puppy likes to pee on everything. So new puppy needs attention every half hour. So that's
definitely
it's definitely a thing. I still I'm not burnt out on making videos or woodworking or any of that because I still love doing all that. Although I could just use a couple weeks break, but that's not going to happen anytime soon because
why not?
Well, there's a couple reasons. There's obligations to sponsors. So once you have that, you have deadlines that you have to meet. I don't have too many coming up, but that's one of the things. And I'm not really that far ahead financially. I'm good for a little bit, but I feel like if I just stopped, I would get behind. And now, as I'm saying this, I'm like, you know what? I probably won't get that far behind because I'm still selling plans. I'm still making AdSense and selling books. It's a mental thing. It's a completely mental thing. And
maybe. I mean, it may not be completely mental. It may there's some truth to like having to keep income coming in.
Yeah, but man, I'm so privileged to have a job where I can be flexible and make my own schedule. And it sounds like I don't want to sound like the millionaire football player who whines about not getting enough passes thrown to him, you know, because nobody can relate.
Again.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to be that guy. Sometimes I just get, I feel down, and I'm just like, ugh.
Well, you know, what happens is, again, I just spent a ton of money on this thing I'm building in the backyard, and there are moments where it's touch and go. It's like, okay, I really got to manage my money because I'm getting down to the wire, and there's definitely the moments where you get a little panicky, and then you're just like, okay, calm down, and then you think, how can I get a lot of money right away? And then you go, oh, I just got to keep planting seeds. I just have to keep planting seeds and try to stay positive. And there's money coming in, but sometimes it doesn't seem to come in fast enough, obviously. And so when I plant seeds, I definitely feel a certain sense of relief. Sometimes when the income is slowed down or low, and you look at your list, you say, oh, I don't have any of these jobs that I typically would have. I don't have, and then you start panicking. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to go out of business. But then the phone rings, and then you get an opportunity to make something for money, or you start realizing it's just a sense of panic that it's always there when you work for yourself. It's always about 2 inches below the surface. And then when the surface gets thin, you start going, oh, okay, this is the month where I go completely broke.
Yeah.
You just got to keep faith. You got to keep faith. And then you get that sense of burnout where you're like, oh, nothing I do is going to make me the money I need right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do have jobs to do. And because you feel burned out, you're like, ugh, I got to work for that guy again. I don't feel like doing that. Or I got to do this. Ugh, I'm sick of doing this again and again and again. But that's when you just bite the bullet and say, I'll do anything. I'll take whatever comes through the door because I got to keep my hands moving and the income flowing to some extent. Sometimes it trips and sometimes it flows.
And I know there was somebody on Twitter that said they didn't want us to talk about making money or making videos, but that's kind of what we do for a living. So sorry about that. Anyway, about like the sponsor stuff. One thing that people may not even realize when we talk about that as an income source is that when you get a sponsored video or some sort of sponsored content, it's not like they send you the money and then you make the video.
You get it 5 months later.
Yeah, you make the video, you get them to approve it, you put it out, and then you send them an invoice, and then they take like what they should have, maybe 30 days to pay it. But what happens is
most are 30 days. Some are 90 days. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to be careful on that when you're signing contracts. But we work with agencies. The agencies work with the brands, and the agencies can't pay you until a brand pays them. So you go out and do a thing for, tool company X. You send the invoice to the agency. They have 30 days. They send an invoice to company X. So they have to wait on company X to pay them, and then they pay you. So it's not like, you're like, I posted the video, now I have a bunch of money. It's like, well, hopefully it'll come before the end of the summer.
That's exactly why I say plant seeds. If you know that at least you're planting seeds as you go, doing this, doing that, or, patting the bushes. That's what I always jokingly call it, patting the bushes when things are low. I send to all the clients that I usually get regular work from. If it's low, I said, guys, I'm available if you need. And then they go, oh, you know what? We just got this thing a couple days ago. You know what? I've been wanting to talk to you about it. So people forget that you're around. So you have to also just send out notifications and saying, hey, I'm alive and breathing. Yeah. Oh, cool. I'm back from my vacation. Let's get started. I have something to talk about. So I always pat the bushes when things get a little slow. Again, we're talking about kind of things slowing down, and burnout is kind of interchangeable. They're both obviously slightly different, but my move up here slowed me down. All my analytics slowed down. My posting slowed down. So in the last couple of weeks, I'm really getting ahead. I've got a lot of videos in the shoot. I've posted quite a few. I'm going to post one today, and I'm just going to hammer it hard because I'm feeling invigorated. I never was on a schedule where I go, every day, every certain day I post at this certain time, but I'm just going to keep posting when I have videos available. So I'm getting my groove back. I feel a little bit.
So I guess that's something I was interested to talk about. So your stuff is starting to move for you, and you're getting back into like some sort of a forward motion and everything. Whereas David has had a pretty good momentum, and then the stuff kind of came in and wrecked the momentum. It sounds like that's maybe the issue, that like somebody tripped you up, you know, and now you're like, okay, I got to get back into this motion that I was in before. Do you think it would be, since stuff has gotten disrupted, is this a time that you could say, like, what can I change in my flow, in my schedule, so that there's a little more margin for unknown to come in? I don't really know how to ask that question.
Yeah. So I have thought about this a little bit, and, you know, you mentioned a while back that, you know, if I don't put out a video on this particular day, it's not a big deal. So maybe leaving a little bit of flux in my schedule. But when you have the deadlines, you have deadlines. I right now my slowest day is typically Friday, because I'll like the quick version of my schedule is Monday planning supplies, Tuesday filming, Wednesday editing, and then Thursday release the video, make the 60-second version for Instagram and Twitter, and do all the promotion and update the website and stuff. And then Friday's typically my slow day, kind of like the day I can do whatever I want, a little bit more promotion or whatever. And so I've decided that Friday is going to be music day, where I'm going to work on music that I can incorporate into my video. So I'm going to try to bring that into my workflow. And
that's cool.
If Friday doesn't, if things are crazy, that's the one thing that I can bump out, because I don't have to make music. I have a library of music that I can already use. So, yeah. and I want to use that as not only to just make music for the videos, but as another creative outlet to hopefully keep the spark going.
Can I throw in an option that you didn't ask for?
Yeah. I'm asking with my eyes.
I think I think that's cool that you're building in music to it, and I certainly would not want to take away that like new, you know, creative outlet or anything. But it sounds like you're packing a week's worth of work into a week, which makes sense, right? But what if you pulled one of those days back to the previous week? So like maybe instead of Friday being the exhale of your week, and like now I get to do something creative and whatever, which, I mean, Fridays make sense for that, right? But what if that was your planning and supply day? What if you did that to prepare so that on Monday you had everything you needed to walk into the shop and like just get at it, or walk into the shop and be like, no, I feel like doing music. Supplies and plans are already ready. I can go do music. But then you have your buffer is not like at the end of the week, the buffer is at the beginning of the week. You know what I mean? So if everything had to fall back a day, you have that option, rather than like getting to Friday and just being like, man, this week was all behind and now I've got a free day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's something to think about. So, yeah.
So you're not really necessarily losing anything, but you're giving yourself a buffer, you know, in case something goes wrong. But I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah. I have one of my really, really good friends. He battles depression, and he tells me like, he'll be fine for a long period of time. Something triggers that, like, and it doesn't even have to be a major thing. It could just be whatever, and then it triggers it, and then he goes into this, he goes into depression for a while. And like, I think there was a couple things at the same time that happened that kind of triggered this like, I feel overwhelmed, as you know, the puppy and grandma. And then I was dealing with this. I don't even know why I'm telling this, but this is just a therapy session, I guess. But I was dealing with this potential sponsor. This conversation started in October, where we were working out like a 3-video deal. And the conversation was really slow, like once a week communication back and forth. And then they would be like, hey, you know, the client they're sending you a product, they're getting back to you. And from October, we finally sent the contract over at the end of December. So that's how long it took. And then by the time I got the contract, I'm like, I don't even feel comfortable with this price anymore. And I don't like the way the contract is written up. And you just wasted a bunch of my time. This is a very isolated case. And I was just like, I don't want to deal with that. And I think that's one of the things that helped trigger this overwhelmed feeling.
It's like,
yeah, because
like
sometimes
lost time.
it's like,
Yeah.
Like you lost all
also, whenever there's like a little bit of like a negative vibe when you have a comment, then all of a sudden that starts creeping into everything. You start thinking like, oh, did I make the right decision? Am I making the right decision now? Is this the right decision this moment? And you start questioning yourself. And I know then the darkness starts to kind of creep in. And that's when you go to the shop and start tinkering and come up with a completely new idea. You know, I know last week I had a little bit of roller coasters in the way that I had to make this thing for Lincoln. And I went in, I had no idea what I was going to do. I was like, oh, I know by the end of the day this has to be done. And as I started the video, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just on autopilot. Ultimately, I ended up coming out with something I'm really proud of. I made this benchtop press brake where you can bend metal with.
That's really cool, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the video is like on my Patreon at the moment. And as soon as they give me the green light, I'll let everyone see it. And it came out great. And now I have this whole, I thought to myself, this is going to be a great thing to share with the community and have everybody try a version of it. Anybody that wants to try, and because I said this is just my first swing at it. If anybody wants to look at this and improve it and turn it into a better version of itself, so I'm excited to see. So it went from being this kind of like darkness, like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to turn in something that looks like it's got some value to it and it's got to really work, and turned it around. So a lot of times when I'm feeling that darkness, that, you know, or if it's a negative conversation with, you know, a client or an advertiser, whomever, I just say, have faith that things are going to work out good. Just because you're just trying. A friend of mine once told me something a really long time ago, and I constantly say it, and I even think about making a poster of it. Make it go right. We would talk, and I'd complain and whine, and she'd say, just make it go right.
Huh.
That's cool. You got the capacity. Just make it go right. And then that gives you that sort of fresh confrontation and be like, all right, I got to get on the phone. This is going to be an hour-long phone call with whomever, whether it's a credit card company or I had that banking issue last week. Just make it go right. Just figure out how to make it go right and do the best you can within your capacity to make it go right. And if it doesn't go right, it just wasn't meant to be at that moment. A funny example of that is I was talking with Ask This Old House. I was talking with Kevin in This Old House since 2009, 2008. And finally, the show that I'm on. So Kevin and I have like flirted for all this time to the point where I'd be like, those guys are never going to pick me up for anything. You know, like I would get frustrated. Well, my general frustration with the TV business as a whole. But from time to time, Kevin and I would flirt on the thing, and then something happened, and the stars aligned, and, you know, something happened on their side where it's the right timing. You know, we as a community created this environment, and we're the ones that caused this groundswell, and then now they're finally catching up. So after all this time, so plant seeds. That's what I'm saying, planting seeds. You never know where it's going to come back. And, you know, you plant seeds, and if you plant a lot of seeds, you don't start obsessing about the 2 you planted. You plant 100, and you start saying, I have all this potential. You plant 2, and you're like obsessive. You plant 100, and you're like, wow, I feel comfortable about what I'm doing.
What about so maybe to turn this around and make this relatable to people with hobbies when they get burnout? Have you ever, Bob, you used to do music. Well, you still do, but you used to do it a lot more.
No, don't.
I saw your Instagram the other day. You were playing. Did you get burnout, or is it something that slowly went away?
Oh yeah, I mean, I run into excuse me, I run into burnout stuff all the time. I mean, like even doing this in hobbies, anytime that I get too far into something and do it too much without like a breath, I'll get burnout on it. And so I just learned about myself that I get really heads down in something really heads down for a short amount of time. And then I have to come up for air and go do that same approach to something else, which is why my channel is the way it is, which is why I'm not a woodworker or a metal worker or whatever. It's because if I were to say like, I'm only going to do woodworking projects from now on, I would get so burnt out on that. And I would be like, I don't ever want to touch any of these tools again, ever, you know? And so being able to hop from thing to thing helps me fight burnout, because it lets my mind like disconnect from something and then reconnect to something entirely different. And I think that applies to hobbies too. You know, I don't think that's specific to a job or anything. I think it's just like about focus and attention. Anytime you're focused and attentive on something, and you run at something for long enough. I mean, well, running is a good example. So I ran 3 marathons over the course of 4 years. When you run a marathon, you have to train a lot. And so it's like 4 days a week, you know, upward of like 35, 40 miles in a week of running. And that's so much time. And to do that for several years straight, I mean, not straight. There was like 18 weeks of training, and then I would like take it easy for a couple of months, start to build back up. And, you know, but it's that same like, I'm going to focus really hard on this for a long time. Then I'm going to take a little break. And then I'm going to focus again for a long time. And you just do that over and over. And eventually it got to where it was like, I don't ever want to run a race again. Ever. Because it just completely burnt out on, I had no motivation for it. I had no desire to put that much time into a thing that I had already done. I just, you know, wasn't excited about it. Like I didn't have a goal that I was trying to top again, because that was a lot of when I was running a lot and doing races, I was racing myself. So like last year I got this time. This year I want to get it 10 minutes faster, you know, and I'm getting older, so I shouldn't be able to do that. So I'm going to fight that and like do better than I did before, even though it should be harder for me to do. And that was my motivation. But eventually it's just like, okay, another 10 minutes, big deal. Like I don't want to put in the work to do that. And I just got burnt out on it. And so for the past year or so, I barely ran. I would do it because like, I don't want to start gaining weight, or, you know, I want to make sure that I'm still healthy, but as little as possible, you know, just to get it done and then move on with my day. And now I'm starting to get back into where I'm trying to come up with some new things about running that are challenging. So I've always done distance. I've always done long races, so they're not necessarily fast, but it's about stamina. It's about running slowly for a really long time, and then every day you make that time a little bit longer to eventually you can run for 26 miles and not die through it. But at the same time, when you're doing that training, if you try to run really fast, you feel like you're going to die. So now I'm trying to get in the habit of doing these like sprint interval things where you sprint as hard as you possibly can for a really short amount of time, and then you take a break. And then you sprint as hard as you can, and then you take a break. And it works an entirely different set of stuff in your body. Different, you know, it treats your... It doesn't matter what it does. Anyway, it does a very different thing for your body. And so I'm trying that. It's still running. It's the same motion in the same place, doing the same thing, but it's a different goal. And so I'm trying to take the same thing that I was burnt out on and find a different way to use it, a different way to approach it, you know, to get a different outcome from it. Theoretically, this will make me faster, you know, and help me like burn fat and stuff like that. So it has a different outcome when it's basically the same thing. So maybe that's another way that you could look at being burnt out on hobbies or work or whatever, is taking the same task and figuring out a different potential outcome so that you have a different goal, you know, something else that you're trying to accomplish with it, something that's new and maybe more motivating. Mm-hmm. Did I go way off topic?
No.
I don't even remember what the question was.
I don't remember what the question was either, but
I'm putting my running shoes on right now.
Do it.
But approaching it in a different way is another good way of getting around that.
You know what, talking about, you mentioned a few minutes ago, hobbyists, do they get burnt out if someone's, you know, it's not really their day-to-day living? Burnout or intimidated? I don't know if this answers either one of those questions, but I like to, if I approach something, and I use the tabletop bench press as an example, when I approach something and it seems too overwhelming, or I feel like, oh, I'm not ready for this, I take the approach of, I'm just experimenting. I'm not here to try and, of course I have my goal. I have my goal set somewhere in the future rather, and to finish this and get this done. But when I'm in the moment, I'm experimenting. I'm looking for connections. I'm looking for ways to make whatever project I have at hand work. Last night I was experimenting on my laser. I mean, it wasn't a video, it wasn't pay, it wasn't anything. It was just me learning. And I just kept experimenting. And I didn't have any like great goals, but I had some great achievements. I made some great wins just playing around with the laser and experimenting. So always take that experimental approach, I feel, helps keep it fun, takes off it alleviates a lot of the pressure of like, oh my God, this has to be done perfect. It has to be done right. It has to be done on time. Just take that experimental approach and just look for connections and have fun.
Do you think that's just because you're not like committing to it? Does that make it easier just because you're not being like, all right, now I'm going to get really good at whatever?
Well, I think the biggest intimidation factor, a lot of stuff, again, we're kind of like going all over the place. This doesn't really apply to burnout, but maybe it can, because if you're in the middle of being burnt out, you don't want to do anything and you're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But I find the biggest problem for people that I work with that have, even me, I experience it. You see the whole project and it's like, you're looking at the entire thing at once. You're looking at it from like an aerial view and you're like, how am I going to get all the way over there? There's all these hurdles in between. I got to get all the way over there. Just get down in the jungle, so to speak, and just stay on the path and just what's next? Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to go eat lunch. And you look back after lunch and you're like, wow, I got all this done this morning. Whereas like the night before, you're laying in bed going, oh, I got to tackle that project. And now I'm already halfway through it and I didn't even realize it because I'm just focusing on the steps in front of me and not necessarily the aerial view. I'm full of metaphors.
Yeah, you are. That's awesome.
But that helps me. And then it like in these last couple of months when like things were dipping a little bit and, like I keep mentioning, people making the comments like, oh, now finally Classic Diresta's back. I don't know where I went, but just focusing on trying to make
California
the videos that I feel like I always make. I mean, make what?
You went to California.
Oh, I did. Oh, I forgot about that. I totally blocked that I completely like emotionally blocked that. It's so funny. By the way, that show's going to be, I don't know if this is public knowledge or not, but the show is supposed to be airing toward the end of the summer. That's man. There's an official date, but I'll let them tell you guys the date. It's going to be at the end of the summer.
Cool. Sorry to interrupt.
Almost a full year later.
I was just trying to be funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. You're right. I forgot I went there. Because like when I look back, I'm like, how did everything slip? Like, what did I do? I'm like, oh, I went away for 5 weeks. Completely forgot about that. Well, yeah, that's it. Just,
so
stay on path.
Yeah, I really like that. Like basically just putting one step in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other the whole time. I mean, that keeps you moving. Like even though it's incremental, it's small, little bits of improvement.
Once a while ago, I was kind of, me and my brother were into screenwriting and we hung out with this guy who was kind of a screenwriting coach. And he just said, what's next? Like we had like this powwow session where we were kind of brainstorming a story. He's like, okay, what happens next? Okay, what happens next? Like we would, like me and my brother were brainstorming up this conversation, this story. And then the guy kept going, okay, what happens next? And I hear that meeting, that one dumb meeting that happened in the 90s. I keep hearing that in my head whenever I'm like at my bench top and I'm working on something. And I hear like this Morin in the background go, okay, what's next? Okay, what's next? And that is a little bit of a motivating factor because it's like, instead of looking at the overall project or saying, oh my God, it has to look exactly like the sketch I presented the client. What's next? What's next?
That's like, okay, what's next? That's like the, and then like you'll get to the end of something and go, and then?
Right.
David, do you think, and this isn't a question about you necessarily, but I've heard, all right, let me start over. I've heard a lot of people in what we do, because we have these platforms where we speak out to people and we tell people what we're going to do or what we're thinking or whatever. So we hear a lot of people make these kind of declarations. I've heard a lot of people over the past few years be like, okay, I've got a big change on my channel or on my platform. Instead of doing this thing, I'm going to start doing this thing. Mm-hmm. And, it's a great plan. It's something they're really passionate about. They really care about. But then they realize maybe into that process that it's tough or it's not what they wanted it to be or something. And then there's like this sense of like, I already committed to doing a thing that now I'm unhappy with.
What did I do?
Yeah, what did I do? And like, how do I get out of it? Do you think, does that have anything to do with well, that's not, you already explained your situation now. But do you think like overcommitment either to yourself or to other people is part of getting to a burnout state?
Yeah, well, I think
I guess maybe to sponsors would be.
Yeah. I mean, all the sponsors that I did in November and December, and having a deadline every single week, that definitely contributed to it, because there wasn't a week where I could take a break. So yeah, for sure. And luckily, I guess not luckily, but in the next couple months, that's not going to be as intense. So yeah, with less commitments and warmer weather coming, maybe the future is looking good. I don't like.
You know, I was gonna say one of my favorite times of the year. And it also happens to be when my birthday is. April and May. It is my favorite time of the year. I every time, because I know exactly. Usually the second week in May, all the trees around here, there's 1,000 trees around me, start to bud, and I say, It's like waking up from hibernation. It really, I mean, it's all these metaphors you see, like in Disney movies, but. Like right now, I'm downstairs before the podcast with a hairdryer, drying the elbow that feeds the house water, drying it, heating it, trying to get the water to flow through again.
I'm
for the 40th
so confused by that statement.
Yeah, I'm hair drying the pipe, trying to heat it up so the ice dam goes away. And the whole time I'm thinking, it's like, in the second week in April, I'm going to start seeing buds on the trees. It's going to be so nice. Yeah. Right now, I'm just sleeping in this like kind of mediocre dream. I wouldn't say nightmare because it's not a nightmare, but it's just a pain in the nightmare.
I love that time too. We bought this house. We moved in July, and you could not on 3 of the sides of the house, road, left, and the backyard. You can't see anything. There's trees all the way around. You can't see any neighbors. And then as soon as all the leaves fall off, we're like, oh man, we have neighbors that can actually see in our windows now. And so I cannot wait for the trees to start growing those buds, and we get that privacy back.
Yeah.
My whole house is cloistered when the summer's here. I have bushes. My neighbors are like, are you going to trim your bushes?
No.
No, I don't care. I want them to grow 700 feet tall. I don't care. Yeah.
See, it's interesting. You guys have like been in this weather and all this stuff for so long that, you know, it's, I understand all of those things. For us, it's still so new that like we got our first big snow a couple of days ago. I guess on Friday the kids got they canceled school because it was gonna snow midday. You know, it was gonna get really cold and really icy and stuff. So we had our first big snow, and we're just like over the moon. Like we went out Friday night at 7:30, 8 o'clock. It was dark, and I was like, "Sweet, there's finally snow in the front yard. Let's go sled." And so we're out in the front yard.
I saw that. That
in
was
the
fun.
dark. It's like sledding down the front yard into the street, and there's nobody out, so it was awesome because there were no cars or anything. We had snowball fights, and you know, played until like 9 o'clock, and then the next day got up and all went sledding, and I mean, it was like awesome. And we had such a good weekend of just like enjoying the cold weather. And I know it's like our first one, and eventually we'll probably get like, okay, that's enough of this, but. Yeah. Right now, we're still digging it. But I mean, I'm also really blessed that like my shop is in the house. It's heated. I don't have to worry about, you know, like you guys were talking about having to heat things up and like get glue warm enough and all that. I don't have to deal with that. The downside of that is I never leave the house. So like I literally will go days on end and be like, oh, I haven't even walked outside. I should probably go outside.
I hate leaving the house. I'm going through this thing lately where it's like, oh, we have to go, we're meeting friends for dinner, or there's a New Year's Eve party we're supposed to go to, or we're going to have a Christmas dinner with the, like, and then I get like instant, my first reaction is always like, no, I don't want to leave the house. This is interrupting what I'm doing. I got things to do.
Yeah.
And then like the next day I'm like, oh yeah, dinner's going to be nice. You know,
Yeah. I mean, I'm that way about travel, you know, like, every time we go on a trip for work, well, I go on a trip at all, but I travel for work more than anything else. But like this weekend, we're all going to Chicago for a thing that's just, you know, not public event. We're all going, and up until about a week ago, that's been a great idea. And I've looked forward to it. And then, like, a couple days ago, I was like, oh, wait, Chicago's next week. Oh, man. I got to get on a plane and go to a thing and then get on a plane and come back. Like, I don't want to go. I'll love it once I'm there.
Want to ride with me?
No.
I'll clean up the front seat of my car.
You want to drive down and pick me up?
Yeah, you can pick me up.
I mean, it's just so weird. Like, I guess maybe that's a condition of owning your own business, is that you know that there's always that work to come back to. And if you travel, it's just pushing things off that you're still going to have to do. Or it's eating into your lead time, or I don't know. But I find myself doing that with every trip, even though I only commit to trips that I want to go on. I love going to Maker Faire. I love going to, any of these events. But every time it gets right up to where I actually have to look at, all right, in a couple of days, I got to pack a bag because I got to go on a thing. I'm just like, I don't want to travel.
I say yes to everything that's like, I'm like, oh, wait, that's in 2019? Yeah, I'll do that. Think the world will be over by then. I won't have to deal with it.
That's a spirit.
Then all of a sudden it's like, wait, Workbench Con is next month? What is this thing called? Send me the information.
What am I supposed to do there? Yeah.
I have a wave.
I have to talk in front of people?
I have a wave with every single event. So like VidCon or Maker Faire or anything, it's like I go there, I'm like, oh, that was fun. I'm probably going to skip next year. And then, and then, 8 months goes by and I'm like, you know what? I need that recharge. I'm going to go to that event. And then, so I'm excited. And then, like you said, that week, you're like, oh, this is the worst week to have the event. And then, then I go, and then it's the same thing every single time. After leaving VidCon last year, I'm like, probably going to take next year off. But right now, I'm like, you know what? I'm looking forward to going to VidCon this year.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. I have that same up and down. It's weird. And it's weird because the same events happen every year. And like once you do one of these events, once you go to one of them, you're like, man, that was so awesome. I don't want to miss out next year because I know more people will come and it'll be more hanging out and more, And then it's like, now I'm looking at this year going, like, I have new things on top of the old things that I already want to go to because I've already been to them before. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of traveling this year, at least at the beginning of the year for me. But anyway, well, I'm recharged. I've been yammering for a long time. You are?
I'm ready to go. So I'm going to leave you guys now, and I'm going to go get to work.
That's not fair.
Oh, this is work. Sometimes having fun is work.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Well,
it's true. Like sometimes I got like yesterday, I dilly-dallied all day long in front of the laser, and then I went to the shop for 3 hours. I came back and I experimented even more. I went and got more material and experimented more. And the whole time I'm like, I should be this, I should be that, I should be this, I should be doing this. And then I'm like, wait, this is work. The better I get at this, the more successful I'll be as a designer, problem solver. So I had to keep reminding myself that even though I'm having fun and I'm in my jams and I'm at the laser and in front of the pellet stove.
Please.
I'm going to use that as the title, just so you know.
You know what I got? I got a Carhartt Union suit, the ones that you could see. You see my cuffs right now are red. If I showed you if I pulled open the top of my pants, the bottom of my pants would be red too. So I have a full on.
Does it have the little butt flap thing?
Dude, you're like Santa Claus.
Wow.
Yep. I am walking around the house like Santa Claus. This thing is great because when it's 7 degrees out, the wind doesn't blow up the back of my shirt. So it feels good. As long as my flap is buttoned, I'm okay.
That's also a good title.
Oh, man.
But I thought maybe Make It Go Right would be a good one, but I'll let you choose. But the point I'm making is sometimes we got to remind ourselves that even though it might seem like we're skirting work, we're actually in work.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, like if you feel like I'm taken away from my regular job, I'm down in my basement. No, it's your job to fulfill your life. So
yeah,
don't feel guilty.
Well, and this season, like at the beginning of the year, is also one of those things where, like I'm starting to deal with tax stuff and I'm having to and since we moved to Kentucky, I'm in the process of creating a new LLC here, dissolving my old one. So there's like a bunch of extra, work and stuff it feels like wasted time, but you're right. It is part of work. It's part of getting things set up to move forward and getting things done for last year and everything. But yeah, it feels like I'm just burning time, like on websites, filling out forms, putting in my address over and over and over and, stuff like that. But, you were talking about the laser thing. Remember last week we were looking up the, maybe this was in the after show. I don't remember. But we were looking up the credit card blanks that you could cut on the laser.
Oh, yeah.
And we mentioned that they were PVC, and somebody let us know that the cutting PVC on a laser is super bad, and it releases like chlorine gas or something.
Yep.
Yeah, so don't do that. You or anybody else. I just wanted to throw that out there because somebody did let us know that that's a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, my buddy Nick told me the same thing. So I got this laser, was given to me by Full Spectrum, but they gave it to me and it comes with like a sample package of materials. And in it was wipe-off board material, perfectly white. You're supposed to write on it with a marker and wipe it off. So I used that to make my Diresta. It's in my Instagram, my Diresta card. So I experimented with all the materials that came with the kit yesterday. And I'm making a business card and I can't figure out exactly like how to do the information. So I had this epiphany yesterday with Taylor. I was like, you know what? I think my business cards are done. It's just going to be a piece of plastic and it's going to say my stencil in it and that's it. I might put a YouTube logo on those ones I'm working on for a video, but that's it. So when you meet me, I'm just going to give you my card. It's going to say like Madonna on it. It's just going to say the card. There's not going to be any information.
I think it'll be really confusing if your card says Madonna. So you might want to put
no. But I mean,
like
I'm taking Madonna or Cher. You know, I'm going to be Diresta.
Yeah, gotcha.
So my card's not going to have any information on it. It's going to be very, very highly conceptual. And hopefully whoever I give my card to won't bother me and call me. But
yeah. So for you non-graphic designers out there who have business cards, a lot of you put way too much information on there. Email and phone number and website address and mailing address and your Twitter and Instagram. You don't need all of that. It's a lot. I think on mine I have a logo on one side.
I'm going the opposite
and my
direction.
website address on the other side, and that's pretty much it.
I will say that, like, for me, I've tried to narrow down. We talked about this before, but I've tried to narrow down the points of input that people can get to me. You know, so like I try to keep it down to email, which I'm not really fond of, but it's a good funnel, and Twitter. And so if you're making a business card, you know, what you're saying, David, is maybe just pick the one way that you want people to be able to get in touch with you and put that on there. Don't put every option. Just force people through a particular door, and then you can manage one door instead of 100 doors. That's,
So you guys see.
Oh, nice. Look at that. I like that.
That's cool.
It's just like a white credit card, and my logo is stenciled through the top.
You spelled Diresta wrong, though. You're going to have to redo this.
Oh, I did?
I was just hoping you'd look and be like, did I?
Panic. Yeah. Yeah.
So, by the way, I did buy the PVC cards. I bought 100 of them. They were only $20. So I have a big stack of them. And my idea for them is I'm going to CNC an aluminum die and then put them in the press, the letter press. Yeah. So I'll be able to imprint them like a credit card. Used to have the raised numbers on it. So it's an experiment.
Could you print ink on them, like on your press? Or are they too small or the wrong type of material?
I don't know. I mean, there probably is a way. You probably have to do what's called tampo printing, which is like a highly toxic etchable ink, which I'm not going to do.
Yeah. Okay.
So what are you guys working on?
I've actually been working on some cool stuff.
Yeah,
I'm pretty excited about it. So the video that's coming out this week, since you asked, you know, we didn't get to say it. So
I walked all over you at the beginning, like I'm walking all over you now. But we skipped it.
Yeah, we did. We always do, or we've started to recently.
You guys changed.
We got a Nintendo Switch for Christmas. We got the kids one. the kids, air quotes. And I've been playing it more than anybody else. It's really cool, but the controllers on the side of this thing slide off, right? So like you can hold them one in each hand. You can play that way. You can play with a bunch of different configurations. It's pretty cool. And so I ended up 3D modeling these little rails that they slide into, printing those out, and then making a wooden box exclusively on the laser. So it's like a wooden box that has a slide-out tray with foam inserts, so you can put the game cartridges inside that, close it up, slide the controllers on the outside, and you have like a little controller with all your games in it. And it's super nerdy and not something that a lot of people will need or be interested in. But man, it was gratifying to like take a thing that I just got and be like, you know what? I should model something to fit this tiny little thing. And I did. And it totally worked. And it was crazy. I don't know. It's just like it doing projects like that to a specific real world object. That's what's moved me forward in Fusion, is like having to be really precise. So I'll have to figure out like, how do I do that? And like, how do I measure precisely enough? And like what measurements are important and, tolerances and stuff like that. And I feel like over the last couple of weeks, my Fusion adeptness has greatly gone up, which is really cool. And I still don't know a whole lot and everything, and I always have to look things up. But I feel way more comfortable in Fusion just after having done like a bookcase recently, which was super easy to do in Fusion. But that and these rails and a couple of other things, and that has really pushed me forward, I think, in learning something that I've needed to learn for a while. Plus, I ended up with like a cool little controller thingy. So fun.
You know, that being said, it's sort of the opposite of something what I said earlier in the show is I said, just get into it, experiment. When you get into Fusion and you start experimenting, you walk away frustrated going, I didn't learn anything. When you get into Fusion and you have an actual end goal and you know exactly what you want to make, that's when you actually really learn something. When you have a final vision in your mind and you try and create it in Fusion, that's when you'll do your best learning when it comes to Fusion.
Yeah.
If you get in there and you start making shapes, I mean, you have to do that anyway, but when you really want to learn and get some retention as far as the information, make something that you need.
A few weeks ago, I did a video that was sponsored by Skillshare. I think it was my Workbench video, but my when they reached out to me, my pitch to them was like, you can use Skillshare to learn Google or SketchUp, and I'll show that in the video. And they're like, oh, brilliant! And so we did that, and then that video did well, and they're like, hey, David, let's do another video. What's your idea? And I'm like, well, this time we're going to make a miter saw, and I wanted to show the audience like how you can use Skillshare to learn 2 different programs and pick which one works out best for you. So the miter saw station is being built in Fusion, and what I'm getting to is this is forcing me to use Fusion. Like I've already committed to that, and so I'm using Fusion, I'm designing it in there, and I'm starting to feel comfortable. And I've been watching a lot of videos these days, and Fusion is such a massive program on what you can do with CAM and modeling, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's huge, and like that's a little overwhelming. That's been part of the overwhelm for me. But I've intentionally not even tried to do any of the CAM stuff, or like I'm working in a tiny little corner of Fusion on purpose so that I can get decent at the modeling end of things. You know, and I send things out to 3D print, and that's very easy. It's like a one-click thing. But 3D printing and Fusion together make a really incredible combo. So for these rails, it's a small piece of plastic. So printing one took less than an hour. And so I was able to like print a short little section to make sure that I had the fit right. And that took, 15 minutes. And then once I had that, I did a couple iterations of that. And then I would like scale it up to the correct length, print that, make sure that worked, add a little feature, print that, so it was like this cool iteration of like changing the model just a hair, printing one out, taking about an hour while I worked on something else, And so it was just kind of back and forth between print and model and print and model. And then I ended up with this tiny little piece of plastic that works perfectly and does exactly what it needs to do. And it was just super gratifying. I don't know. Anyway, that video is going to be out. That's a long way to say that.
Awesome.
What have you been working on?
So this week I'm making the miter saw station, and it's a pretty simple build. I'm not doing anything too special. I know I mentioned a few weeks back that I was going to steal your hood idea of magnets and cutting it out. I don't think I'm going to do that for phase 1. My miter saw has a pretty darn good dust collection right there, and after I get it set up, I kind of want to see what it's not collecting for a while and see where it's going. And I think in your video you did a test of like you wanted to see where the dust went, and then you put some dust ports back there. I kind of want to see what's working and what's not, and so it might be a 2-phase. Maybe phase 2 was not even filmed. It's just a thing that I do. But yeah, pretty simple build. It's going to be it's going to have the 2 feet section where the saw sits on. To the right of it is 4 feet, and to the left of it is 6 feet. So it's going to be pretty big. Nice. At least big for me.
Yeah. Sweet. That was like my station that I did recently was like one of the most useful things I've done in a long time. I get so much use out of having like a fixed, and it's a basic table. It's not like it's anything complicated, but man, what a help it's been.
I have a fun little story. So last night I wanted to figure out the perfect height for it, because right now I have my miter saw sitting on a board on top of the dust extractor. So it's just kind of like it's really low to the ground, and so you have to bend over quite a bit to use it. And there's no stops, there's no rails or anything, so it's not being used to its full potential. And trying to find the height for it, and I'm like, well, if I build this counter that's going to go all the way down the wall, I want it to use as someone at the table saw and have a big like sheet that sheet can actually rest on that counter, if it's to help hold it up. So then I was like, is that going to be too high for the miter saw? And so I put the miter saw on my stool that has an adjustable height, and I got it to that height, and I was testing it out. I'm like, okay, I think this is going to work. And I turn around for a second, and the miter saw fell off the stool and onto the floor. And thank goodness I have carpet. There was no damage. It seemed to all be the track was fine, and but it was a scary moment that I could have put my miter saw out of alignment.
Did you feel super vindicated that you had carpet in that moment?
Here's the funny thing is I didn't even think about that. I was just like, oh no. I put it back up and it slid right and it seemed to be square. And then I posted a little funny thing on Twitter and somebody's like, good thing you have carpet. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yep. Yeah.
That's funny. Jimmy, what about you?
I did my hand cut print, and we printed the other night. It went really well. And at the suggestion of Scott, the guy that handles all my shipping, he said a lot of people have been calling in and asking about framing the prints that I sell. So he said, why don't you do a video about how to make a frame? And so this video is going to start with me cutting the block, which is going to become the print plate. I make about 200 prints, and then the last part of the video is me making a frame and putting one of them in a frame. So that's what I was working on last night for about 3 hours, is just trying to get that video done. And if it wasn't 2 degrees in the shop, I probably could have wrapped it, but I had to paint it and just let the paint dry. So today I'm going to go in and finish that video. Probably have that out definitely by the time this airs. So that's what I've been working on. And then just experimenting with the laser quite a bit just to get my skills up, and trying to stay warm. Trying to keep the pipes from freezing. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. We're running long, and we don't necessarily have to have a pick. But have you guys been watching anything cool?
I totally forgot. I totally forgot.
That's cool.
I can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to pick my buddy Brett. Brett is my shop assistant, and he's been hanging around for the last year. November was 1 year that Brett showed up to say hello, and Brett didn't know in the beginning when he started his channel. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, well, just get started, whatever. I mean, he had every intention of doing it, regardless of what I said. But he got started, and he started developing his own style. And now Brett's very good at After Effects and video effects and titles and stuff. And he's also a good videographer. But as far as incorporating his love for making into his love for making videos, it's really developing really great. If you guys get a chance, check out Brett. Skull and Spades is the name of his channel, or Brett McAfee. And his videos now lately, each one of them, since the beginning, but now more often, incorporate a story. And his first 10,000th video, he recreated the opening of Train Spotting with me, like pretending to hit him when Ewan McGregor runs through traffic and the car skids.
I saw the Instagram thing and I was like, what is going on there? But yeah.
Oh yeah, he did a great thing. He's got the Scottish voiceover and he's got the music playing, he did a great job. So it's great to see his style develop. And that's the bottom line. So go check it out. It's completely more unique than anything that's going on right now in the maker community. It's just great. Every little video has a story. So it's almost like a TV show's developing, and it's great to watch. And I know it's just going to keep getting better and better. So, Brett, congrats, brother.
Awesome.
So my pick this week it's not a video, but I recently found out that my buddy Jonathan J. Katz Moses, where he lives, they were dealing with the fires a couple weeks ago, and they were evacuated from their home, and they got back. Everything was fine. Unfortunately, a lot of their neighbors and their neighborhoods were completely destroyed. And then they got hit with the mudslide. And from what I understand, that Jonathan's house is fine. It's there's like 3 to 5 feet of mud all the way around it, but their neighbors, pretty much the neighborhood was completely destroyed by this mudslide, and so Jonathan has started a GoFundMe for the first responders, where 100% of the proceeds go to the people helping out, and so that is my pick this week. And Jonathan, I love you. Hope you're doing well. And he has a couple businesses, but one of them is this magnetic dovetail jig that he sells, and because of the evacuation and being away from the house for so many weeks, he's behind on getting his orders out. He hasn't been around a computer, and he sent out this email like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm behind on orders," and it's like, man, take care of yourself first. And he's a really good dude. So California has been putting up with a lot of disasters lately, so our hearts go out to them.
Yeah, that's rough. Okay, yeah, we'll have a link to that if you guys want to help them out. For me, so Josh is in the office with me right now, and I'm going to embarrass him probably, but he can't say anything because we're recording, so that's cool. So Josh, who's been working with me now, put out a video for the first video he's put out in a long time, and it talked about where he's been, and it's a really cool kind of retrospective on the past several months, like where his family's been, what they've been doing, where they are now. And I hope it motivates him to get back into making project videos and stuff. I think he's getting there, which is really cool. Looking forward to seeing those. And yeah, I just want people to go check it out and, encourage him to get back to making videos. Patreon supporters. We got to thank our Patreon supporters for this week. Wise Old Al, Evan and Caitlin, Corey Ward, Malton Make, Works by Solo, Michael Schubert, and Make Build Modify are our top supporters. We're super grateful for them and for everybody else that helps us out over there. It's really cool. Like we were talking about earlier, this is fun. Like the three of us getting to talk is fun because we're friends and we get to hang out every week. But this is also part of work, and Patreon lets this be part of work. They fund this and let this time be valuable to us. And so that means a lot. So I want to say thank you to everybody over there. And if you want to help out the show in that way, go to patreon.com/makingit, and you get access to the after show, which is just more of us talking about different stuff. Sometimes there's secret stuff, sometimes there's not. And this after show is going to have an intro. So,
5 minutes
see
in.
what you're missing over there. Yeah. Anyway, you guys got anything else for this week?
Meh.
That's it. Just trying to stay warm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Love
See
you.
next time.
Love you too, man.
I love both you guys.